Asterisk, asterisk. The moment Moscow realized America had solved war, asterisk, asterisk, there was no explosion in Moscow. No sirens, no emergency broadcast. Instead, there were maps being quietly updated, red arrows stretching farther west than expected, and Soviet analysts staring at timelines that no longer made sense. In the summer of 1944, while much of the world focused on the liberation of France, a far more unsettling realization began to form inside Soviet military offices. Asterisk, asterisk, the American advance was moving too fast, and it was not slowing down, asterisk, asterisk. From a Soviet doctrinal perspective, the offensive led by asterisk, asterisk, George S. Patton, asterisk, should have collapsed under its own weight. The distances were excessive. Supply lines were stretched thin. Armored columns were advancing at a tempo that, according to every established model, demanded a pause. Fuel shortages were expected. Ammunition bottlenecks were inevitable. Friction was supposed to appear, but it didn't. Day after day, reports showed the same disturbing pattern. American units continued pushing forward without the operational pauses that define traditional warfare. There were no signs of logistical paralysis, no sudden halts, no mass regrouping caused by supply failure. To Soviet observers, this was more alarming than any battlefield defeat. The concern was not Patton's aggressiveness. Commanders like him existed in every army. The concern was that asterisk, asterisk, his speed was being sustained, asterisk, asterisk, not gambled. As Soviet analysts tracked the advance more closely, they began to realize that something fundamental was being misunderstood. This was not a commander outrunning his logistics. This was an army whose logistics were moving at the same speed as its combat units or faster. That realization forced a shift in focus. Tanks and divisions were no longer the primary subject of analysis. Attention moved away from the front lines and toward the space behind them. What was feeding this momentum? What mechanism was preventing the natural slowdown every army experienced after rapid advances? The answer did not come in the form of a weapon or a breakthrough technology. It came as a name circulating quietly through internal reports. Asterisk, asterisk, Red Ball Express, asterisk, asterisk. At first, it sounded unimpressive. Trucks, roads, drivers, supplies, nothing that resembled a decisive military innovation. Yet the data painted a different picture. Vast quantities of fuel, ammunition, spare parts, and food were moving forward continuously, day and night, along routes reserved exclusively for supply traffic. To Soviet planners, this was deeply unsettling. Their military philosophy was built around mass, production, and centralized control. Logistics were carefully calculated, rigidly planned, and expected to constrain operations. What they were seeing contradicted that logic entirely. The Americans were not slowing operations to match supply limits. They were asterisk, asterisk, reshaping supply systems to match operational ambition, asterisk, asterisk. Maps in Moscow began to show something unfamiliar. Not stalled arrows, not defensive lines stabilizing, but movement constant, sustained movement backed by an invisible structure that refused to break. Quietly, a dangerous thought emerged within Soviet analysis circles. Asterisk, if the United States could sustain this level of momentum across France, what would stop them from doing it anywhere else? Asterisk, the Red Ball Express was not viewed as a temporary wartime improvisation. It was interpreted as evidence of something larger and industrial, organizational, and logistical capability that extended far beyond the battlefield. At that moment, long before ideological rivalries hardened into open confrontation, Soviet planners sensed a future problem forming. A type of warfare where victory would not be decided by who assembled the largest force, but by who could keep an entire system moving without interruption. The Cold War had not yet begun, but its logic was already taking shape. The system that never slowed down. From Moscow's perspective, the most disturbing detail was not the speed of the American advance. Speed could be explained away as recklessness, luck, or temporary overextension. What could not be explained was continuity. Day after day, the American columns kept moving. Fuel shortages never materialized. Ammunition never ran dry. Vehicles were repaired, replaced, or rerouted with a consistency that contradicted every historical precedent the Soviets relied upon. Soviet analysts began shifting their focus. Instead of tracking tank units or infantry divisions, they started following something far less glamorous. Supply flow. And what they uncovered was deeply unsettling. The Red Ball Express was not a single road, nor a single convoy. It was a logistical organism designed to stay alive under constant strain. Thousands of trucks, many of them civilian models hastily adapted for military use, moved in an endless loop between ports and the front lines. Roads were reserved exclusively for supply traffic. Movement followed strict schedules, but execution relied heavily on local initiative. Drivers were encouraged to keep moving at all costs. For Soviet planners, this was a doctrinal nightmare. In their system, logistics were centralized, controlled, and rigidly planned. Flexibility existed on paper, but rarely in execution. The Red Ball Express operated differently. It absorbed losses without stopping. When a truck broke down, another filled the gap. When routes were damaged, alternatives appeared almost immediately. The system did not depend on perfection. It depended on momentum. Reports noted something especially alarming. The Americans were not optimizing for efficiency. They were optimizing for speed and continuity, even if it meant wasting resources. Fuel was burned aggressively. Vehicles wore out faster than expected, but the advance never paused. From a Soviet standpoint, this suggested a level of industrial depth that bordered on the incomprehensible. It became clear that George S. Patton was not outrunning his supplies. His supplies were outrunning traditional warfare logic. Maps in Soviet offices began to change. Instead of marking enemy units, analysts drew thick lines representing flow fuel, ammunition, spare parts, food. Those lines were thick, redundant, and resilient. If one was cut, others compensated. This was not logistics as support. This was logistics as a primary weapon . The psychological effect was immediate. Soviet doctrine had always assumed that rapid advances would naturally slow due to friction, distance, fatigue, breakdowns. The Red Ball Express shattered that assumption. It suggested that the United States could decouple operational speed from logistical something no major power had achieved at that scale. Even more troubling was how ordinary the system looked from the outside. No secret weapon, no revolutionary machine. Just trucks, roads, fuel drums, and drivers. The danger lay not in innovation, but in organization ***. To Soviet observers, this raised a terrifying question. If the Americans could improvise such a system under wartime pressure, what could they design deliberately in peacetime? The Red Ball Express was never intended to be permanent. It was born from necessity. Yet its success revealed something fundamental about American military thinking. Instead of forcing operations to conform to logistics, logistics were reshaped to serve operations. This inversion challenged decades of Soviet planning assumptions. Quietly, internal assessments began to change tone. The Red Ball Express was no longer described as an emergency solution. It was described as a model ***1 that hinted at how future wars might be fought. Wars where movement mattered more than mass, where disruption mattered more than destruction. By the end of 1944, Soviet analysts understood that Patton's advance was not an anomaly. It was a demonstration. The real power was not at the front. It was behind it, rolling forward without pause, without hesitation. And that realization would not fade when the war ended. It would follow them straight into the Cold War. ***, the Soviet doctrine that couldn't keep up ***, as Soviet analysts dug deeper into the mechanics behind the American advance, an uncomfortable truth began to surface. The problem was not a lack of information. It was not a misunderstanding of terrain or enemy strength. The problem was structural. The Red Ball Express did not simply outperform Soviet logistics. It operated on principles the Soviet system struggled to accept ***. Soviet military doctrine was built for control. Centralized planning ensured predictability, discipline, and accountability. Every movement was calculated in advance. Every allocation approved through layers of command. This approach had advantages in mass production and large-scale mobilization. But it carried a hidden weakness. Speed depended on permission ***. What the Red Ball Express revealed was a radically different philosophy. American logistics did not wait for perfect conditions. It tolerated inefficiency. It accepted waste. It prioritized continuity over optimization. To Soviet planners, this looked chaotic, almost irresponsible. And yet, it worked. In Soviet systems, disruption created paralysis. A broken link forced the entire chain to pause while corrections traveled upward and decisions came back down. The American system absorbed disruption locally. When a truck failed, another replaced it. When a road was damaged, drivers rerouted without waiting for authorization. Initiative was not an exception, it was expected. This flexibility was deeply unsettling. Reports emphasized that the Red Ball Express did not rely on elite units or specialized formations. It relied on ordinary drivers, basic vehicles, and simple rules. Keep moving forward. That simplicity made it resilient. And resilience was something Soviet doctrine struggled to replicate quickly. The realization forced analysts to confront an uncomfortable comparison. Soviet planning excelled at ***, building power ***. American planning excelled at ***, moving power ***. In a future conflict, movement could determine outcomes before mass ever came into play. Maps and internal memoranda began highlighting this asymmetry. Soviet forces could be assembled in enormous numbers, but sustaining rapid. Long-distance operations required a level of organizational elasticity that did not align with centralized command culture. Changing that culture was not a technical challenge, It was a political one. And politics moved slowly. Even more troubling was the implication for peacetime competition. The Red Ball Express had been assembled under pressure with limited preparation. If the United States could improvise such a system during wartime, Soviet planners feared what might emerge when similar principles were applied deliberately with time, funding, and planning. This was not a gap that could be closed by copying equipment. Trucks could be built. Roads could be paved. Fuel could be stockpiled. But organizational behavior could not be replicated overnight. By late 1944, internal assessments shifted tone. The Red Ball Express was no longer treated as a wartime curiosity. It was cited as evidence of a systemic advantage, one that extended beyond Europe and beyond that war. The fear was subtle but persistent. In the next great confrontation, the decisive factor might not be firepower or manpower, but the ability to sustain momentum indefinitely And that was a race the Soviet system was not confident it could win. Patton was not the problem For a time, Soviet analysts tried to simplify the explanation. They focused on the man at the front of the advance. Aggressive commanders had always existed, and history was filled with examples of leaders who pushed their forces beyond conventional limits. At first glance, George S. Patton seemed to fit that pattern perfectly. To Moscow, Patton appeared impulsive, ruthless, willing to gamble everything on speed. Soviet doctrine had seen such figures before and had learned that their advances usually collapsed once reality caught up with ambition. The expectation was simple. Patton would eventually outrun his fuel, his ammunition, or his maintenance capacity. But that moment never came. As weeks passed, it became increasingly difficult to frame Patton as the source of the anomaly. The advance did not slow when resistance increased. It did not pause when distances grew. It did not fracture when terrain worsened. Every variable that should have punished overextension failed to do so. That forced a critical reassessment. Internal Soviet evaluations began to separate command style from systemic capability Patton was no longer treated as a reckless outlier. He was reclassified as a visible expression of something deeper, an operational environment that allowed such behavior to succeed rather than self-destruct. In other words, Patton was not bending the rules of war. The Americans had rewritten them. What disturbed Soviet planners most was how replaceable Patton suddenly appeared in their analysis. Remove him from the equation, and the system would still function. Another commander could step in. The supply network would continue moving. The momentum would remain intact. This realization was deeply unsettling. Soviet doctrine placed enormous importance on individual commanders operating within strict frameworks. Authority flowed downward. Initiative was tightly controlled. By contrast, the American system seemed designed to support bold decisions rather than restrain them It did not depend on a single personality. It amplified any commander willing to exploit speed. Reports increasingly emphasized that Patton's success did not stem from personal brilliance alone. It stemmed from an environment where logistics absorbed risk on behalf of the commander. Mistakes could be corrected quickly. Overextension could be compensated. Momentum could be sustained even under imperfect conditions. From Moscow's perspective, this inverted a fundamental assumption of warfare. Traditionally, logistics limited ambition. In the American model, ambition drove logistics. That inversion had consequences far beyond France. If a system could enable one aggressive commander, it could enable many. If it could sustain rapid movement in Western Europe, it could sustain it elsewhere, across continents, climates, and political boundaries. By reframing Patton as a symptom rather than a cause, Soviet planners reached a far more troubling conclusion. The real adversary was not an individual general or even a single army. It was an entire operational philosophy backed by industrial depth and organizational flexibility. Patton could retire. The system would remain. And systems, unlike commanders, do not age, tire, or hesitate. That understanding marked a turning point. From that moment on, Soviet analysis shifted away from personalities and toward structures. The question was no longer how to stop Patton. The question became far more dangerous. How do you compete with a system that turns speed into doctrine and logistics into power? The fear of what came next, By the time the fighting in Western Europe began to wind down, Soviet analysts were no longer focused on explaining what had happened. Their attention had shifted to a far more unsettling task. Projecting what this meant for the future, The Red Ball Express had solved a wartime problem, but its implications reached well beyond 1944. What Moscow saw was not an isolated logistical success. It was a proof of concept a demonstration that the United States could sustain large-scale military movement across vast distances without collapse. That realization triggered a deeper anxiety. If the Americans could move an army across France with uninterrupted momentum, what would stop them from doing the same across oceans? What limits still applied if logistics no longer forced pauses, regrouping, or exhaustion? Soviet planners began asking questions that had no reassuring answers. Traditional assumptions no longer held. Distance was supposed to protect the homeland. Time was supposed to slow invaders. Infrastructure was supposed to be a constraint. The Red Ball Express challenged all three. Internal Soviet assessments increasingly framed the American advantage in systemic terms. The United States was not simply producing weapons. It was producing mobility at scale Ports, railways, highways, fuel depots, maintenance hubs, everything could be connected into a single, continuous flow. From this perspective, George S. Patton asterisk's advance was no longer the headline. It was the warning sign. The true concern was what would happen when similar logistical principles were applied deliberately, globally, and permanently. This fear reshaped how Soviet planners viewed the post-war world. A future conflict with the United States would not begin with a single decisive battle. It would begin with positioning, with supplies already in place, with movement happening before diplomacy failed. The Red Ball Express suggested that American power could arrive already in motion fully sustained from the first day. That possibility forced uncomfortable conclusions. Matching American logistics would require more than factories and fuel. It would require decentralization, local initiative, and tolerance for inefficiency traits deeply incompatible with the Soviet command culture. The cost of adapting would be political as much as military. As a result, Soviet strategy began to pivot. If the Americans could outmove them, then confrontation had to be delayed, constrained, or avoided altogether. Defense would rely more heavily on denial, deterrence, and the threat of escalation rather than maneuver alone. In quiet briefings and classified memoranda, the Red Ball Express was cited not as a historical curiosity, but as an early signal, a moment when the balance of future wars became visible. The war had shown that the United States could sustain speed indefinitely. The post-war question was what that speed would be used for next. By 1945, the outlines of a new kind of conflict were already forming. One defined not by continuous battles, but by constant readiness. Not by massed armies clashing, but by systems competing in silence. The Cold War would not be fought like the last one. But its logic had been revealed on the roads of France. And Moscow had been watching. Asterisk, asterisk. The lesson learned in silence, asterisk, asterisk. After the guns fell silent in Europe, there were no public acknowledgments in Moscow. No speeches admitting surprise. No official documents praising American efficiency. What followed instead was silence measured, deliberate, and deeply analytical. Inside Soviet military institutions, the Red Ball Express was dissected not as a historical episode, but as a asterisk, asterisk, case study asterisk, asterisk. The first conclusion was uncomfortable, but unavoidable. The Americans had not won momentum by chance. They had created conditions where speed could be sustained without collapse. That realization forced Soviet planners to confront a painful truth. Their own system was optimized for preparation en masse, not for asterisk, asterisk, continuous movement under pressure asterisk, asterisk. At academies and staff colleges, instructors quietly reframed recent history. The focus shifted away from heroic breakthroughs and toward operational endurance. The question being asked was no longer how to seize territory quickly, but how to asterisk, asterisk, keep forces supplied once they were moving fast asterisk, asterisk. This marked a subtle but important change. Soviet doctrine had always emphasized centralized control as a source of strength. Orders flowed downward. Initiative was carefully bounded. The Red Ball Express exposed the cost of that rigidity. American logistics functioned precisely because it tolerated local decision-making, improvisation, and redundancy. These traits conflicted with Soviet political realities. Attempts to adapt followed, but cautiously. Exercises experimented with improved supply coordination. Planning documents emphasized deeper stockpiles and expanded transport capacity, yet the core issue remained unresolved. Without decentralization, flexibility could only go so far. And decentralization carried risks the Soviet system was unwilling to accept. What troubled analysts most was that the American model did not depend on exceptional circumstances. It depended on asterisk, asterisk, organizational habits asterisk, asterisk. Habits that could be reinforced, scaled, and exported. In post-war assessments, the Red Ball Express increasingly appeared as an early warning. A signal that the United States had discovered how to transform industry, transportation, and command culture into a single operational engine. One that could be activated rapidly and sustained indefinitely. This understanding reshaped Soviet expectations of future conflict. Wars would no longer be decided solely by who mobilized more men or produced more tanks. They would be influenced by who could asterisk, asterisk arrive first, stay supplied, and maintain pressure without pause asterisk, asterisk. In that environment, even a numerically superior force could find itself reacting rather than dictating terms. The implications extended beyond Europe. If American logistics could be projected globally, then traditional geographic buffers lost much of their value. Oceans, once formidable barriers, became logistical challenges rather than strategic limits. By the late 1940s, Soviet planners accepted a quiet conclusion. They were no longer competing only against American weapons or commanders like George S. Patton ***. They were competing against a system designed to turn *** movement itself into power ***. This lesson was never announced. It was absorbed, and it would shape every major Soviet decision that followed, from force posture to alliance strategy, long before the Cold War was openly acknowledged. From French roads to a global system ***. As the post-war world took shape, Soviet planners began connecting dots that few outside their circles noticed. The Red Ball Express had been dismantled, its trucks reassigned, its routes reopened to civilian traffic. On the surface, it looked like a temporary wartime solution that had served its purpose and faded away. In Moscow, no one believed that. What mattered was not the trucks themselves, but the *** logic behind them ***. The Red Ball Express had revealed a principle that could be scaled, adapted, and exported. If supplies could be pushed forward continuously across France, they could be pushed across oceans, air corridors, and entire continents. Soviet analysts began recognizing familiar patterns in the years that followed. American forces did not demobilize in the traditional sense. Instead, they repositioned. Bases appeared in strategic locations. Ports were expanded. Airfields multiplied. Stockpiles were established far from the continental United States. What looked like post-war security arrangements carried a deeper meaning. Logistics were being globalized ***. The Berlin airlift confirmed those fears. To Soviet observers, it was impossible not to see the connection. Once again, the United States chose movement over confrontation. Supplies flowed continuously, not for days, but for months. The method was different, aircraft instead of trucks, but the philosophy was identical. Keep everything moving. Absorb losses. Maintain pressure without escalation. From the Soviet perspective, this was not coincidence. It was evolution. The Red Ball Express had been the ground-based prototype. The airlift demonstrated that the same principles could be applied vertically. Soon after, naval logistics extended them across oceans. What emerged was not a series of isolated capabilities, but a *** single global system ***, capable of sustaining power far from home indefinitely. This realization reshaped Soviet threat assessments. Future conflicts would not begin with sudden invasions. They would begin with positioning, with supplies already in place, with forces supported by an invisible infrastructure that never slept. The Red Ball Express had shown that once momentum was established, stopping it required extraordinary measures. For the Soviet Union, this presented a dilemma. Competing directly in such a system required adopting similar organizational habits, decentralization, redundancy, local initiative. But those habits conflicted with political control. The alternative was to prevent momentum from forming in the first place. This logic became foundational to Cold War strategy. Denial replaced maneuver. Deterrence replaced pursuit. Missiles, air defenses, and layered barriers were emphasized not because they were elegant, but because they could *** interrupt movement ***. If American power depended on flow, then disrupting that flow became the priority. In this way, the roads of France cast a long shadow. What had begun as an emergency response to a fast-moving front had matured into a permanent way of projecting power. The Red Ball Express was no longer a historical footnote. It was the ancestor of a global posture that defined the Cold War itself. The Americans had learned how to keep wars moving. The Soviets learned that stopping movement might be the only way to survive. And with that understanding, the final shape of the Cold War came into focus, not as a series of battles, but as a competition between systems, each racing to impose its logic on the world. Asterisk, asterisk, the war that was won before it began, asterisk, asterisk. Years later, when the Cold War had fully taken shape, few people remembered the sound of engines on narrow French roads in 1944. The trucks were gone. The signs had been removed. The Red Ball Express no longer existed as a physical system, but its impact had never disappeared. For Soviet planners, the lesson endured. What unsettled them most was not that the United States had won a campaign. Wars had winners and losers. What haunted their assessments was asterisk how asterisk it had been won. Not through overwhelming numbers, not through a single decisive battle, but through a system that refused to slow down. The Red Ball Express revealed a future where power was measured not only in weapons, but in asterisk, asterisk, continuity, asterisk, asterisk, in the ability to sustain pressure without pause, in the capacity to move faster than opponents could adapt. Once that threshold was crossed, traditional advantages, terrain, distance, even time began to lose meaning. This understanding reshaped everything that followed. Cold War strategy was built on anticipation rather than reaction, on preventing momentum rather than defeating it, on deterrence strong enough to stop movement before it began. Missiles, air defenses, and rigid borders were not just tools of fear, they were tools of interruption. From the Soviet perspective, the greatest danger was no longer surprise attack. It was asterisk, asterisk, uninterrupted flow, asterisk, asterisk. The Americans had demonstrated that wars could be sustained like industrial processes, that supply, movement, and decision-making could be fused into a single operational rhythm. Once established, that rhythm was extraordinarily difficult to break without catastrophic escalation. That is why the Cold War unfolded the way it did. Not as a constant clash of armies, but as a silent contest between systems. One designed to keep power moving, the other designed to keep movement from happening at all. The Red Ball Express was never mentioned in speeches. It never appeared in propaganda posters. It was not celebrated as a weapon. Yet it quietly taught the world something essential. In the modern age, victory does not always belong to the side that strikes hardest. It belongs to the side that asterisk, asterisk, never has to stop, asterisk, asterisk. And long before missiles sat in silos and bombers circled the globe, that truth had already been proven on the roads of France by an army that learned how to turn motion into dominance. The war ended. The trucks stopped, but the system kept moving.